Hello everybody. So one of the most enjoyable things about being a concept artist is the thumbnail stage. And this is something that unfortunately doesn't show up much in portfolios, and it's something that is most desired. Now there is something to be said about being able to finish a drawing and illustrate it and paint it and make it look pretty. But in the industry, especially for video games, we love seeing the thought process behind a design. We like to know where it came from, because ultimately you want to tell a story about how you came up with an idea, what were some of the references used, and your own methods. Because everybody's method is different in creating armor, vehicles, creatures, you name it. So what I have here is a very, very simple sample of a thumbnail sketch. And I'm going to show you a quick way on how to generate these with just paper and pen or pencil, whatever you want to use. And then we're going to take either one thumbnail sketch or elements from several of them and then refine it into a new design that's going to be slightly below these. So I'll probably do about 4 or 5 of these. And I also want you to get your cell phones ready. You're probably asking, why the heck am I getting my cell phone ready? It's because I want you to time yourself on these thumbnails. Okay, so I'm going to put a ground plane in here. We're going to do some creatures. Very simple ground plane. I'm going to number it 2. You always want to keep your stuff nice and neat. That's probably the OCD side of me when I do artwork. It's your sketchbook. You organize it however you want to organize it. But more oftentimes than not, the more organized you are, the easier it is to find stuff. Okay, so what I like doing is just giving myself a little ground plane here. And I'm going to time myself 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops. And that means that I'm just going to throw some lines together with thick to thin pressure. And let's see what overlaps. I'm just going to start really light. And what this does, this method is great because it prevents us from falling into bad habits. Because every single person watching this right now has specific things that they like to draw. Whether it's cute and fluffy, spiky, evil stuff, hard surface, whatever. So if you're trying to, think outside the box and create something new and expand your horizons, this is a really good way to do it, because what's happening is all of these lines that are forming with just scribbling, this looks like a hairball. I can't deny that. But what this does is it helps you look at it abstractly. And it's hard. I know. It's hard to try to draw new every time that you put your pen and pencil to paper or digitally. So if you're following along with me and you have your Cintiq, you have your Procreate, your tablet, whatever you got with you, try the same method. But do not hit Control-Z. Whatever you do, do not erase. Do not hit Control-Z. That is an easy escape. These are not mistakes. You have to allow yourself to think freely and clearly when you're doing thumbnail sketching. Otherwise, all your ideas are going to look the same. You have to check yourself at the door. So when I drew this thumbnail, I spent about maybe a minute and a half on it, put some dark lines in there, and I said, okay, I'm going to stop. I don't know what it is. It kind of looks like a deranged turtle. I don't know. And then this one looks like a big beetle. Or an industrial designer might look at these and go, you know what? It kind of looks like a spaceship, or it kind of looks like an electronic device. That's the beauty of thumbnail sketching. So I'm just throwing some stuff together. There's going to be no shading whatsoever. If you do want to hint at some shading, there is a very good method, and that is just imagine that all of your thumbnails are lit from above to keep things simple. So everything on the underbelly is going to get a slightly darker set of lines. And you still want to treat this as thick to thin, because what that's going to do is, even though there's no shading in this whatsoever, all the overlapping markings, it's creating its own value. And if you keep overlapping them with lines, you're going to fill the gaps, and it's going to create a really cool texture. Now, I don't want to spend much more time on this, but I'm starting to see these like bulbous shapes coming out, so maybe it's kind of like a weird ship, or maybe a base that's hidden in the forest or something. ultimately my goal for this is to design a creature. My channel is dedicated to creature designers. However, set that aside. If you're an industrial designer, if you're just a concept artist in general, the great thing about doing creatures is that they can be interpreted as machines. They can be interpreted as like props, or even elemental or elements from environments like rocks and plants even. So it's kind of cool. So here I'm just putting in some dark lines. It's kind of fun. Okay, so I'm done with that thumbnail. I don't know what that is, and that's the beauty of it. So let's go on to number 3. All right, so let's move this over here so you can see it. So I'm just going to line up number 3. Just going to put an easy ground plane in there. Number it. Okay, so let's try to approach this differently than I did before. So let's do maybe some triangular shapes. Just put like a weird guitar pick shape in there. It almost looks like I don't know, like Starfleet Academy. There we go. I love Star Trek. Is that Starfleet? Yeah. Alright, so now what I'm doing is I'm just putting in some lines that I don't have in here. And these are larger lines that looks like they're wrapping around what appears to be a big Christmas tree. I don't know what it is. Maybe it can form into something. So these dark lines that I'm putting here could be legs of a creature. A big insectoid creature. Because you guys know me by now. I like drawing insects and really strange, evil things. Not always evil, but scary. Let's just say scary. Put some spheres in there. Now it kind of looks like fungus. Maybe it's a big beetle. Maybe it's a big reptile. There's some loose skin over here. So you can see that even with this loose thumbnail, there's a lot of depth happening in here, and I'm not even thinking. You guys can do this too. If you have your sketchbook open, just take your pen or pencil, make sure your pencil is sharp so that you can have some nice lines, and just apply different pressures. Just move the pencil across these shapes. It's gonna be cruddy, it's gonna be gritty, dirty, it's gonna look like a hairball. Allow yourself to draw that. This stage of the concept, or this, hold on, that's totally a blooper. This stage of concepting is the most important out of anything. This is where the ideas get generated. Because what happens is if you don't have a good idea, then you're just going to apply more detail to an idea that's not good later on in the pipeline. So you have to make sure your ideas are good first. Sometimes it takes 35 thumbnails, sometimes it takes 5. You just have to trust the process. You will know, based on your gut instinct and your art director's gut instinct, or whoever is reviewing your work, when an idea is starting to sing and when it is good. Okay, so this one's a little different. This one looks like stretched skin over maybe some bone or exoskeleton underneath. So that's kind of cool. The other thing about thumbnail sketching is you want to try really hard to make each new thumbnail different so it's not monotonous. Now, everybody has their own style. Like, I have my own style of sketching. You all have your own style. So your strokes will look similar, but make sure that your silhouettes are a little different. Okay, because you want to give variety. You have to imagine it's not just you looking at this, especially if you are in charge of a bigger project where more people are going to have to, or you're going to have to send it down the pipeline for approval, because it's not just you. You are responsible for just coming up with these initial shapes, all right? And then senior artists have to look at this, the art director, other concept artists, the 3D artists that are eventually going to take your 2D art and making it into an actual living, breathing thing. That's another one. So we don't have to think about articulation of creatures at this point of the game, because I mean, they're just crazy shapes. That's all you got to worry about. All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm putting in another, it looks like a bug, but like with really fat legs. Huh. That's kind of cool, actually. So I notice how underneath here is a little darker. The other technique that I like doing to really show what's the top and what's the bottom and stuff, if there's a gap in between the legs and then on the like the belly, the legs, and then the floor, I just like to make all those interconnected. So I'll just make it dark underneath there, and then it'll look like it's walking without you having to do much. And then I just start throwing some lines together on the larger areas where there's not a lot of stuff inside there. The fun thing about thumbnails too is that when you leave it open for interpretation, it's going to hopefully excite the team. Not all of your thumbnails are going to be attractive. Let's just be honest. They're not going to look good, most of them. And if you've been in the industry long enough, you know that 99% of your work will never be seen by the public. Like when you buy the art of books for games and film, and you see all that really nice, pretty, polished art, wait until you see all the stuff that didn't get polished, that isn't pretty, and that would probably embarrass all artists. Because we all have to go through the cruddy stuff in order to get to the really cool stuff. So I'm probably spending maybe a little bit more than 2 minutes on these. There are some areas in a thumbnail where you just can't help but just start putting in little details because you know something is there. You know something is there that you like. You don't know what it is, but it's there. It's like if you have a large sheet of sketches. Let's say there's 50 of these, okay? And you have to choose one. It's a pretty daunting task, right? Well, chances are that you're going to get to a sketch that, or a couple, that are really intriguing. It could be a really neat silhouette, or it could be an aspect of one of your creatures, maybe like something that could look like a tail later. And those are really fun because you can start to not cherry pick, but you can start to pick and choose like, okay, that looks really good. And I know that I'm going to do a good job on that because I love it. And I love that shape. And I know that I can make that into something. You know how when you guys draw, you open that sketchbook up, you have that nice blank sheet of paper. And when you start to put stuff down, it just feels right. You get into that flow state as an artist. See, look at me. I took what I was doing in number 4 because it reminded me of a caterpillar. So I started doing these little, like a little pill bug. I started to do these exoskeleton shapes. It looks like an accordion. And I kind of want to bring that aspect into this thumbnail. And that's so that's the other thing about thumbnails is like when I started with number 1, so I drew this just to open the video up so you guys can see something right away. When I did number 1, that allowed my mind to open up to get to number 2. And then by doing these 2, I was able to do 3 the way that 3 looks. So when I'm on number 5 here, I couldn't have gotten to number 5 unless I had done 1. That's the beauty of thumbnail sketching. So when you get into that flow state, your mind opens up. Okay, and then depending on if you have reference in front of you, which I encourage everybody to do, look at the reference too and be like, oh man, this animal has really cool antlers. It could be like a kudu or something. Like those antelopes look good. The moose is kind of cool. Very long legs, looks very fantasy based. And all of a sudden you start looking at pictures of Godzilla and King Kong and be like, I wonder if I can add some reptilian and gorilla aspects into my creatures. I have no idea what is happening here. I don't know. All I know is that my brain is now flowing to the point where this stuff wouldn't have happened unless I had gone through 4, 3, 2, and 1. So let's just see what happens. I'm just throwing some lines together. You see how some are darker, some are pretty dark underneath, and then all of a sudden they're very light gestural lines going across the body here. All right, so let's just start doing that. And then let's have a little bit of fun here, and let's just start putting some random spikes in. See how I'm not really caring about how sharp they look? I'm just indicating a spot that they could exist in. They're just darkened lines. The other great thing about drawing thumbnails with a pen versus a pencil is that you are forced to keep everything on your paper now. Remember when I was saying earlier about don't hit Control Z? You can't do that when you're doing it traditionally with a pen. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I've actually wanted to do Control Z when I'm drawing traditionally. It's really funny because we're used to it, you know. Like people ask me all the time, "Do I sketch digitally?" I'm on Photoshop every single day because with what I do for a living, I still have to render stuff and paint it and get that stuff ready for clients. And you know, you have to hit it from a thumbnail point of view, and then you go to the refine stage, which I'll show you after number 6. So we'll do the refine sketch under here, and then you can paint it, you know, like if you wanted to scan it in and paint it. So right now I think I might be spending a little bit too much time on this, but underneath here, instead of legs, it just kind of looks like a slimy slug. So maybe it's more of, oh, you know what it looks like? Maybe like a mutated graboid. Are graboids mutated? I don't know. I love trimmers. Apparently they have 7 now. 7 Trimmers movies. Pretty nuts to think about. I was 10 when the first one came out. 1990, that's hard to believe. Okay, here is an instance where I actually can put in a little bit of shadow just because that underbelly is right there. So that looks cool. So to separate the exoskeleton from that, maybe the soft underbelly, I'm just going to put some dark lines in there. You see how all these gestural lines are flowing? Like I'm scribbling over these. Look at all these thumbnails. This is just very loose thinking. But of the thousands of people that are going to see this video, every single one of you, you're going to interpret these thumbnails differently, which is the goal, including for myself. Because when I'm looking at these, I'm going, you know what? There's some potential in number 2. And I like the legs in number 4. But I like the spikes and exoskeleton of 5. That's the beauty of thumbnail sketching. So let's do number 6 here. Let's make this different. All right, so I noticed that there's some like hilly shapes here. What if we don't do that? I'm going to totally go outside of the box. And I'm just going to do a bunch of lines. It looks like sticks tied together. See, look at that. I even went under the base because I just don't care. That's fine. Put in some spheres here. Wonder what this is going to do. And then maybe we got an ellipse. Oh boy. What did I just do? I don't know. But you guys can come along with me on this journey to figure out what is actually happening on my sketch page. This looks like something from Monsters, Inc., but creepier. Ah, it kind of looks like a spider now. Very, oh, you know what? With the side of it almost looks like a leech. Oh, can you imagine a leech with spider legs? No, thank you. And that's exactly what I'm just envisioning in my head. This thing is really gnarly. So I think I'm going to make the joints a little thicker. Those little spheres that I put on there could probably be kneecaps. Like that. Do you see how I'm not trying to be nice and neat with all of these? It's taking care of itself. So I'm just letting my pen do the talking here, not me. Well, I am. I'm probably talking your ear off by now. Hopefully you're following along with me and at least learning something. There we go. So from the time that we have started this video, hopefully if you've been following along with me, you have 6 really cool thumbnails now that you can learn from, study, and figure out maybe you can take some of these and refine it into something neat. And that's exactly what we're going to do. You see me? I just jumped up to number 2 here. Probably not supposed to do that. That doesn't count as being timed for 2 minutes on that sketch. Okay, enough of that. So let's try to finish these off a little bit. There's not a lot of line weight on this one as much as I would have liked. But again, I can't freak out about that because even if I did choose this one to refine, this is not my final version. So it's okay if it's a little cruddy looking. But let's go up here and start to put some darkness where the underbelly of these creatures would be. There's the floor or the ground, whatever it's standing on. There's another one. Okay, so before we get into the refinement stage, which is part 2 of this video, or this lesson, we're going to review what we've done, and I'm going to show you how you can jump to the next level without being confused and intimidated or frustrated. All right, so we're going to review our thumbnails, and we're going to try to pick one that we are most intrigued by. Now, it's just a personal preference, but I feel there's something about number 4. I don't know what it is. I really like number 4. I do like number 5, but I feel like it's just kind of a worm, like a termite. We've seen that a ton of times. Number 4 seems almost mammal-like, but mixed with an arachnid. So 4 is the most intriguing, and I'm going to look at each one. 3 is cool because the skin looks stretched. So technically, I could go with number 4 as an overall silhouette, but take some aspects of number 3 into it. So maybe stretch some skin out. Number 1, I do like. It just seems like a warm-up. It's almost as if it's just a turtle-like creature from another planet, just kind of evolved differently and maybe in another dimension. Number 2 is really ambiguous. It could be a creature. And number 6 is just gnarly. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose number 4. Okay, so that's mine. I'm going to check mark it. And then we are going to move down and we're going to refine it. So I'm just going to put refinement. Make sure I spell correctly so everybody knows that I can spell correctly. Refinement. So this is going to be the refined sketch, and we're going to give a nice little ground plane for it. And then when I start that process, I'll be able to zoom out and so you guys can see the sketch a little better. Oh, actually, I might just keep it there. And then I'm probably going to take some aspects of number 6. So it's going to be a combination of 4 and 6. 4 is going to win out on the silhouette portion, and then 6 is going to win out on like the secondary and tertiary details, because these are really crazy looking and I like them. I can imagine number 4 walking along a swamp or some kind of forested region, and then these look like flowers when in fact they have stingers on them, and whatever is going to chase it will probably regret that. So let's jump into the refinement stage. Now, just to recap, what I'm going to be using is number 4 for the basic silhouette, and then I'm going to use elements of 6, like I was just explaining. And I'm just going to jump down here. So I might be moving the sketchbook up and down just so you can see which ones I'm pulling from, but I'll try to keep everything in view. And I'm going to start off with drawing a more refined version of number 4. And this will start with an outline. All right, so I'm carefully looking. Oh, it wasn't working. I always have those little spaces over here on the left to kind of, break out the ink again, because sometimes when you don't use it, it dries up. So you got to open that up. Okay. This is going to be a very weird creature. One that it almost looks like a rodent. And I like that. So maybe it's an alien rodent. And I'm just kind of lightly touching some spaces where I could be putting some legs. Maybe there are some strange tentacles in here. I'm keeping things very, very light. But I'm also looking at the big shapes, because that's what I ultimately want. I want the big silhouette, the big shapes, and then I can work in towards the refinement. All right, so I'm going to give myself a pretty bare bones outline of the belly underneath. Look how light this is. I'm just taking my pinky finger and I'm just lightly holding my hand in place as I move across that. I'll try to keep the shape of that original silhouette up there, and then that tiny little tail over here. Whenever I do this, I often think about the planets that it could possibly exist on. Because we don't know what's out there. But it's always fun to imagine. We discover planets, it seems, on a weekly basis now, especially with James Webb Telescope. I geeked out when they finally were able to launch that thing, and from the time that it has launched to now, it's just amazing what it has shown us. Like galaxies that we thought were the farthest away from us, you know, that originated within like 300 million years of the Big Bang, all of a sudden to 100 million years of the Big Bang. It's just crazy. And also the galaxies, I see, you can tell I'm geeking out about it. The galaxies that it's now showing are proving that they're much brighter than what originally thought. So maybe creatures like this can exist from there. So you can see I'm refining this. I'm spending more time on it. And at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm taking elements from number 6, because these were just a last spur of the second additions to the body, but they look like something out of, I don't know, the Body Snatchers, The Last of Us, and then Fungus, and who knows what else. But I definitely like those. So I think I'm just going to indicate where those could exist on my creature. Just little lumps here and there. Bare minimum interpretations of what it could be. Because like in that original silhouette up here, it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, and then 4 legs on each side. So it's going to be 8 legs total. And it's like it's sitting on it in the back. It's almost like like I said before, a little rodent. I said like probably too many times. So I'm not going to say that the rest of this video. I promise. If I catch myself, I'm going to edit it out, and then my sentences are going to sound weird, but you know why they're edited out. So I'm not going to say that. Anywho, let's get these legs drawn in here. All right. I'm also trying to keep the same energy. Oh, let me move it up here a little bit. As I'm drawing, I'm looking at my camera too, like the viewport, and want to make sure that what you're seeing is what I see also. I've caught myself sometimes where I'm drawing something and I realized that it's completely off camera like this, and my hand's down here drawing. I'm like, what's going on here? That's not fair. So maybe this little bit down here could be an extra leg. As a matter of fact, let's make it an extra leg. And I'm going to put in some tiny claws. Because remember, this is the refinement stage. When you refine your thumbnail sketches, you have to honor your original sketch. And I think, and I'm totally guilty of this, this is where a lot of the energy from your original sketches, it's lost. It happens all the time. Have you ever noticed that if you're a traditional artist and you scan your stuff in to paint over it digitally, or you take a traditional sketch that you've done on paper that you really like, and you're like, you know what, I said like. No, I'm leaving that in because that was part of the sentence. You scan it in, and you are immediately recognizing the fact that when you put color on it, something happened to the original energy of the sketch and it's non-existent anymore. Oh, I would hate when that would happen. Okay, so it doesn't look like this creature's very mobile. Maybe it just kind of scoots across the ground. I don't know. So you can see here that the majority of my concentration is about getting the silhouette in. I haven't even begun to think about skin or nails, scales, fur, anything like that. And I'm looking at these lines, the major ones that I drew, the darker ones that are showing up, and going, how can I bring those into something like this? And the other way to keep the energy from your original sketches is to keep those natural arcs that you drew. So for example, and this happens a lot in transportation design when we would draw cars, or car designers in general, when you draw cars and you have those nice aerodynamic swooping motions to make it look like the sketch is actually moving on the page, it's lost when you make it very stiff because you're trying to mimic that line perfectly in a refined sketch. Don't Don't hold back. Okay, just commit to the line, and that's what's going to preserve that energy. Okay, so now I'm making these fungus shapes, fungi shapes over this thing. So this thing is truly alien looking. Now, how much time should you spend on a refined sketch? That is the age-old question, because in my teachings I would always say, well, thumbnail sketches shouldn't be any more than 2 minutes. And then if you want a slightly more refined one but still loose, maybe 5 to 6 minutes, just to throw numbers out there. And a truly nice refined sketch, a minimum of 30. That's what I would say. So once we do this, now I can start to think about different types of shadow I put in here. And also the feet. Like, how is it going to crawl across the ground? I don't know. I don't even know what the face looks like. But I do know that based on some of the shapes that are in that head of my original thumbnail, I think it's going to have a big eye and maybe, that looks like cordyceps. There we go. Now that, if that's not creepy, I don't know what is, but maybe that is the eyeball on it. It's pretty gross, huh? Now I'm getting some more ideas. Maybe there's like a little, oh, I said the word like again. I totally lied to you guys. I don't think I'm going to edit them out. I'm going to hold myself accountable. So these could be little arms, kind of like the creature in Cloverfield. Hard to believe that creature was a baby. I already said that in another video too. You can tell how passionate I am about creatures too. I'll reference them multiple times in back-to-back videos. Okay, so in the refinement stage, you can also think about anatomy, muscles, tissue, and other areas that are surrounding the bigger bony landmarks. Okay, so we have these big oval cordyceps shapes. What if they're growing out of the side of the creature? Well, guess what I have to account for now? How they're growing out of the side of the creature. You can't just place shapes like that on top of the skin and just say, hey, they're growing from that. No, you actually have to show the skin allowing it to grow from it. It's the same thing if you were to draw spikes or different directions for fur even. Okay, why is it changing direction? Well, you have to show why fur grows on the skull of a bear the way it does versus the neck, why it faces a different direction. So to make this alien-ish, I'm just going to put multiple eyes right here like a spider. It's really cute. That's subjective. Comment below if you think my creature is cute. Comment below if you think it is hideous. Comment below if you think I have no idea what I'm talking about, but you just love seeing me draw crazy stuff. I will accept all opinions. I have thick skin, don't worry. That's the one of the requirements of being a concept artist. You have to have thick skin because it's what you draw is not going to be pleasing to the eye for everyone. It's just not. That's why it's up to you to be as versatile as possible, coming up with as many ideas as possible to make everyone happy. Because at the end of the day, it's not about you, it's about making the client happy. But when you're just sketching thumbnails and teaching people how to do it over YouTube, of course it's just going to be fun. But still, I got to make myself happy on this at some point when I'm teaching. So I know that I'm teaching it the correct way. So as I pass over this weird creature as a refined drawing, I'm looking back at my thumbnail sketch that it's from, and I'm going, you know what, there's some crazy looking shapes and some markings in here that I could probably bring down into my drawing. So for example, it looks like the thumbnail has these legs coming out of an exoskeleton, but I also have those weird oval fungal shapes. So how can I incorporate both of those? Maybe those strange oval shapes are growing from the part where the bone comes out of the skin. So now we have to think about texturing. So I think I'm just going to put some nice lines, some very light, faint lines over material that I think should be bone-like. And then I'll keep all the white area over here more cream colored. Okay. Well, wait, no. My paper is cream. It's moleskin. More blank. That's what I should say. So now you can kind of see the separation of skin and I guess you can call it bone. Another really cool way to make your refined sketches stand out whenever you take it to this stage is when it's closest to the ground, make it a little darker and then fade your lines upward into the natural tone of the paper. And the reason you do this is because in the methods that I've taught before, when you do spikes and horns and such, and you darken the tips of these areas, it brings attention to the end of that area so you know that it is finalized. And also it gives the illusion that there is shadow. So you notice I've hardly done any shading. Like I'm not taking my pen and just aimlessly shading these areas. I mean, I did that area, but it's very strategic. Okay, so now I really have to think about where that belly is. Also, I've hinted at these different legs existing on the other side. Now the way or how close these are together, it's going to determine how much you can actually see of the other leg on the other side. So for example, this little triangle right here is the other leg. It's this one. But I'm just going to lightly shade it in and then that's it. This right here is this leg just on the other side. So I'm just going to lightly shade it in. And also especially if you're working with pen and you have to hatch in order to have some decent shading, make sure that you keep all the hatching in the same direction. Unless you're going all out and really shading an area well, it just keeps with uniformity. Okay, you want to make sure that it looks good. Even in the underbelly right here, if it's darker, it's like right underneath that leg, you can make it dark and then fade it off. So you see that the direction is still slightly turned this way. It's not vertical, it's just turned this way. I've kept that same method of shading in that leg over there. Okay, and then of course I can put these little crazy turtle-like claws in here for this back leg. This poor thing probably can't even walk very well. It's almost like evolution just forgot it. It's like, you poor thing, you weren't really finished yet evolving. We're just gonna let you still walk on land. And again, down by the face, because I have already outlined the edges of each eyeball, I'm going to start shading with my pen in between all of the little eyeballs, but leaving the shine on the actual pupil. There we go. And then now I can start bringing out some of these crazy bulbous shapes, and there's going to be some texture on those too. And also, to add depth, I'm going to make more rounded shapes, but they're going to be slightly lighter as they move towards the back near the spine. Okay, and as far as the spine goes, maybe these shapes will be growing directly out of that area. Okay, what if we double them up? It's almost like a little Godzilla. We'll just double them up and even triple them up. Okay, so what I did right here, that strange cordyceps fungus shape coming off that hip, it's duplicating on the other side because of symmetry, but this is going to stay light. Okay, so again, I'm looking at the direction of this hatching that I did in the belly, and then I'm just going to keep that same direction, but the pressure is going to be different. So right under here where the least amount of light is existing is the darkest part. Okay, and then here, that's on the far end of the creature, so is that leg. So you want to keep those tones the same. This helps with depth. Now, if you look in between these legs, this belly right here is actually going to be lighter. Why is that going to be lighter? because when those legs opened up, more light is coming down, it's bouncing off the ground, back up onto the belly, so it's not going to be as dark as this. I'm getting technical, but hopefully you're following along with me and at least seeing how I'm starting these things. Because you have to start thinking about these different areas. You can't just like draw and pray that they're going to end up well. You really have to think about how the skin wrinkles around these joints, what the shadow is going to be like. Because let's face it, nobody wants to have a flat drawing, right? Everybody wants their stuff to look realistic. And this is the kind of stuff that you have to, these are the kind of things that you have to do in order to make them seem real or more realistic. So like these really dark, I guess you can call them appendages. Looks like a proboscis even. You know, speaking of proboscis, what if we put tiny little hairs on here? See, this is what happens when you start refining creepy pictures and animals for that matter. There we go. If that doesn't look otherworldly, I don't know what does. I also wouldn't want to see that walking around because that is kind of scary. You wouldn't know to pet it, to step on it. Heck, if I saw this, I wouldn't even know if it was alive. I would just assume it was driftwood, I guess. All right. Also, you might be hearing a leaf blower in the background. I can't edit out that sound, but that's what that sound is. Adding smaller details is probably one of the most enjoyable parts of refining a sketch, especially after you feel pretty good about the overall shape and what's happening. Right now, I'm putting in some smaller wrinkles on places where I'm pretty sure skin will be folding, and there's probably some fat layers and maybe some scales and such. But in the larger areas, it's really fun to put in scales. So I like to do smaller little circles, not really circles, but shapes that will follow the contours of the larger area that you're drawing. So for example, that right there could be the very beginning part of the rib cage, because this is the head, this is the leg, there's the rib cage, and I'm seeing the overall barrel shape of this body, so I'm just trying to form all of those scales around that barrel shape. Same thing with out here, where the majority of the rib cage is going to be showing. So it's going to wrap under to the underbelly. The underbelly could just be a ton of little circles, and make sure that you apply perspective to these circles. You can't just put them flat. So you have to imagine what those big scales are going to look like if they continue to follow the stomach, wrapping around to the other side. They flatten out. There we go. All right. So once we get these big areas, and they're going to be flattening out up here because the back is rounded, you know, it's kind of like seeing shapes on the earth. And then when you see it go over the horizon, because you know the earth is round, not flat, then it's going to appear to be the same type of thing. Yeah, I totally put that flat earth plug in there because, oh, never mind. That's a whole different argument. The earth is not flat. This creature knows it too, because it can see it from space. This creature is very smart. All right. See that big area that we took care of in a matter of just several minutes? The same thing could be said about smaller areas too. But you really have to think about how you're going to bend those little details around there. Is that a tail? It's quite possible. I don't know if I want it to be a tail though. Maybe, yeah, let's just make it a tail. Why not? It's like a little turtle tail. Maybe that wasn't a successful tail. That poor thing. That is not a good looking tail. Oh, this thing. And you know what? This creature is probably very happy where it lives. It probably lives in some kind of swampland, just trudging along, not knowing that it is hideous. But maybe it's not hideous compared to its other inhabitants, you know, of the area that it lives in. Maybe there's some like fur growing up off of these things because it's disgusting looking. Here we go. Oh man, the fun of drawing creatures. And the fun of drawing a refined version of this. So this turned into that with some design elements of this. And I took all these into consideration too. I wouldn't have gotten here had I not drawn these first. So all of these are helping me tell a story for our little fella down here. So once you start getting in these details, and you're pretty happy with them, because again, even this isn't final. That's the thing. It's a refinement of the thumbnail sketch, yes, but this by no means is finished. As a matter of fact, once we get this kind of drawing done, it's just going to open up possibilities to take it even further. That's the beautiful thing about thumbnail refinement. So what I am going to do, because this entire body is rounded, I'm just going to turn my sketchbook a little bit, and I'm going to add in what appears to be a core shadow as it wraps around to the other side. You got to be very careful when you do it with a pen. I'm not pushing, well, I'm hardly pushing with any pressure. There we go. You can see I added just that little bit of shading on top of those scales, and then what I can do is I can go back and hit it at a different direction, and I'm barely going to apply ink to it. It is a thing to practice with when you have a pen, and this type of shading you do have to be careful with, because if you push a little harder, then all of a sudden you have a very dark ink line that doesn't look like shading anymore, and you definitely want to be careful of that. But folks, this is how you refine a sketch, and I could be spending another 2-3 hours on this, but hopefully if you've been following along with me and you started off with a really crazy thumbnail, maybe it turned into something. Maybe it turned into your next portfolio piece. And if you're doing this digitally, hopefully you did not Control-Z anything and you did not erase anything. Because what is there to erase? How do you know you're incorrect? If you think you're incorrect, then you're overthinking it. Remember that. You haven't decided on anything yet. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the design phase. I mean, game development, like if you're doing concept art for games, I mean, you could be on a character for a full month, 2 months, 3 months. It could take a long time until you get something that truly is unique and is good for the environment that the game is set in, the years, or the time frame that it's set in, all of that. All right, thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed this. Like and subscribe if you're in school right now and you're trying to learn, you want to get into the industry. Comment below. I'd love to hear your stories. Check the links in the description for the Creature Design Workshop Discord. It's a bustling community. People are joining every single day. We're showing pics of our studios that we've set up. We're getting some techniques down from industry professionals, because there's a lot of really great artists out there, a lot of really good YouTube channels. Like shout out to like Proco and all kinds of channels. But anyway, have a wonderful day, and I go live every Friday at, when do I go live? 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually I have a little premiere of it, but I'm going to be going live. There you go. Bye, everybody.